3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is March 22nd, 2021. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
I have a little bit of a confession to make, Carl. I did not watch any hockey this weekend.
You know, it was the first weekend of spring. I think that's an allowable thing to have happen. It
was a wonderful weekend. I spent both days entirely outside, and at night I had to watch a 4-hour movie, which took me 3 nights to watch.
You watched the Justice League.
I watched the Snyder Cut. Did you watch it?
I haven't been able to work myself up to watching a 4-hour movie yet.
You gotta break it up.
I think that'll be the case.
There's no way to do it all in one go.
Was it good though?
I liked it.
So it was better than the original one.
Oh, yeah. Far and away, in my opinion. I don't know if it's a good movie, but I enjoyed it. It was a competent movie, and it set up a possible franchise that I now wish that they were pursuing.
I feel like you say that it was competent, but if it takes you 4 hours to tell that story, I'm not sure that's the word I would use for that.
But here's the thing, though. It did not need to be 4 hours long. I don't know if you're familiar with Zack Snyder's style. If they had just cut in half all of the slow motion close-up reaction shots of people's faces, they could have easily gotten that movie down to theater time.
Right. Which seems even 3 hours. If you could have cut an hour of, and I guess that was his issue, was that so much got cut from the last one.
They changed a lot.
So is it because here's my confession time. I did not watch the previous version of Justice League because DC has become so terrible that I don't even bother usually anymore.
It's fine. Yeah.
Did you watch both?
I watched the initial theatrical cut.
Yes.
The Joss Whedon one. I mean, I saw it when it came out.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that I haven't watched any individual DC movie since.
I did. I watched Wonder Woman 1984. That was good.
Was it? I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone had talked it down so much that my expectations were very low. And it wasn't a good, if you hold it to the same level that you would hold a main Marvel movie, it's not that. But if you just want a movie with some action in it, yeah, it was fine.
I find the tone of these DC movies is it's off a little bit because they're trying to be dark and gritty, but they're also but humor and levity works in Marvel. So let's try and squeeze some of that into here. And it really makes for an odd tone throughout the film.
It's true. They should really just stick to their lane and figure out what they want their universe to be. Because, I mean, when they started, they were the ones that really kickstarted this whole thing with the Batman trilogy. And then it fell apart.
Yeah, you're right. But at this point, you're never going to be Marvel. Just let it go.
It's true.
Do your thing. You have good heroes. Give them good stories.
Yeah. I mean, I have thoroughly enjoyed all of Marvel's stuff. WandaVision.
Haven't watched it yet.
Ooh, okay. No spoilers then.
Now that it's all been released, I'm gonna binge it though.
It's if you have 4 hours on a weekend where you didn't have time to watch hockey, but you did have time to watch a 4-hour long movie, you can find because there was 8 episodes of Wanda and they're 40 minutes. That's literally a Zack Snyder movie. You got time.
But probably better.
So much better. I think that is the best television that will be on all year.
I mean, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, you should be. But there was hockey, although
there's
this
lots
hockey
of it.
Show did start with us talking about our weekends outside. I also spent plenty of time outside this weekend. Did that. Did watch a little bit of hockey, but not as much as normally, and didn't spend 4 hours watching that movie. But lots of hockey did happen. We're going to get to lots of that. We actually have some of your questions coming up here. We've got some of that. We're going to put another team in the Elimination Station. But speaking of eliminated, the Buffalo Sabres have eliminated Ralph Krueger as the head coach of their team on the heels of them losing 12 games in a row.
I mean, they're a little late to the party, don't you think?
I do like that it took them 12 in a row. Like, do you think that, like, what was it about that 12th loss that they said, you know what, Ralph, this ain't it?
I feel like they must have given him some sort of rope. Like maybe after the 8th loss, they were like, "Okay, you got 4 games to figure this out. If nothing changes, we're going to have to put an end to this."
Mm-hmm. So,
like, if not, surely after the 4th loss, he was like, I'm in hot water here.
Yes, absolutely. If they lose tonight's game against the New York Rangers, it will have been 1 calendar month since their last win.
Man, and when did they fire him? Do you remember the date?
The exact date? That would have been...
I just want to know if they've played games since he's been gone.
They have, yes. So they are now, I believe they are now at 13 games because they had Saturday's game canceled against Boston.
And they lost against Boston 4-1. Man, this is bad, even for Buffalo.
Yeah. So they lost to New Jersey on Tuesday. Then they fired him Wednesday. And then Thursday, they went out and lost 4-1 to Boston, which, I mean, they would lose to Boston, absolutely.
And now they've had games postponed.
Then they had 1 game postponed, and now they're back because Boston had players in COVID protocol.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was about time. I don't know what's in the water in Buffalo that this team, year after year after year, and it's not like it's the usual suspects. It's not like they've had the exact same team over and over again. They've been making changes. They've been trading guys. They've been signing guys. What is going on in Buffalo?
I think the biggest issue is that they've got Jack Eichel. That was a draft pick of theirs. Who else on this roster? Rasmus Dahlin, draft pick of theirs. 2 first overall picks. But if you look up and down, the amount of players on this team that are playing significant roles that they drafted and developed are non-existent. And they've been bad for long enough. You have to have some of those guys hit.
Well, yeah, that's why it's so bad, because they've been picking high for so long.
Right, even the Pittsburgh Penguins that always seem to be trading their first round pick year in and year out are developing their own players and getting them in there. And Buffalo cannot.
So it sounds like you're saying this is pretty deep into the fabric of their staff here. Like kind of top to bottom, right? Scouting, development, coaching.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, okay, since 2010, here are the first round picks picked by the Buffalo Sabres. Mark Pacheck. Joel
Don't know who
Armia.
that is. Okay, heard that name.
He's in COVID protocol. He's one of the reasons that the Habs Oilers game is canceled tonight.
Okay.
Mikhail Grigorenko.
Mm-hmm.
He was traded in the Ryan O'Reilly trade.
Yep.
And then went to the KHL. Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah.
Sam Reinhart, who's actually, I would add him to that list of like competent contributing players on this team.
Yep.
Alex Nylander, who is now a Chicago Blackhawk.
Yep.
Casey Middlestat. Rasmus Dahlin, Dylan Cousins, and Jack, don't call me Quinn Hughes.
It's not a great track record.
Like, and you go down to the rest of that list. I have no idea who virtually any of these players are. Literally the only one I recognize is Cliff Poo. That is the only name that stands out to me on this list. That's not true. There's also, I mean, the only players that I recognize are JT Compher, who has gotten a role with the Avalanche, also in the Ryan O'Reilly trade, and Nikita Zadorov, who was traded also in the Ryan O'Reilly trade and was just traded for Brandon Saad.
So that Ryan O'Reilly trade, that was a big one for them.
Maybe if they had and if you look at the guys from that they got back for him, not the best. Maybe they should have just held on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's true of a lot of the last few moves that they made. But that's what happens when you promote your VP of business development and then don't backfill the role.
It's true. I think what so that their development struggles, but looking at that list, it seems like their pro scouting is also terrible, and their player evaluation when it comes to trades.
It seems like a failure. That seems to be the root of it. You're right. They got to clear out that draft war room and bring in a whole new group of people to run that thing.
With some sort of track record. Stop bringing people in who have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough for Buffalo. It's got to be hard on these players. It's got to be hard on the fans. At least they don't have to be there in person seeing this.
Yeah, I'm sure they're very grateful for that fact right now. But this leads to what I said. We'll get to some questions from listeners. One of them is related to the Sabres. Will they? This comes to our friends from On the Warpath. Will the Sabres open next year 32nd in the power rankings? Because a newspaper in Buffalo put them below the Kraken already this year. Do you think that they will open the year as the worst team in the power rankings?
I think it has the potential to be close, but no, I don't think so. I think they'll finish ahead of Seattle.
Depending on what Seattle does and who they pick up, I think it'll be an easy decision for a lot of newspapers and blogs and all those things to put Buffalo below, because then it also gives them the chance to have their hot takes where they put Seattle at 12 so that they can make the playoffs.
But here's the thing about Seattle and expansion, because we saw it how many years ago now? 3 or 4 years ago with Vegas?
I think 4 at this point, yeah.
That's not going to happen again. Teams and general managers made stupid mistakes with Vegas and expansion. They're not going to make those mistakes again. Vegas walked away with a better team than they should have in that expansion draft.
Absolutely. And teams had more time to prepare for this one. They had more time to get their contracts and no movement clauses in place so that they don't have to be trading a pick and a player just to have their guy not taken.
Yeah. So I think Seattle's going to have a tough time next year. I think they're going to have a tough expansion draft. What I do think that they're going to do is go out and land a big fish in, pun intended, in free agency.
Is a Kraken a fish?
I think it's like a mythical sea monster. So kind of.
Yeah.
Like in the animal kingdom, I would classify it as a fish.
What would you put is an octopus a fish?
Carl, do you know who you're talking to?
Look, I also don't know the answers to these questions, which is why I'm asking them.
I think so.
I assume that a Kraken and an octopus would fall into the same categories.
Okay, so here's the answer that Google spat out, okay?
Okay.
Octopuses are invertebrates. This classification includes all animal species except those belonging to the subphylum Vertebrata, which includes fish, mammals, reptiles, birds, and amphibians. That didn't make sense to me. This class includes all animal species belonging. So yes, technically they're a fish.
Okay. So they're an so they're an invertebrate.
Yes.
Which means that all fish are invertebrates, but that doesn't mean that all invertebrates are fish.
Correct. There's a bunch of animals that can be invertebrates.
Right. Okay. Which
one of them is fish.
I didn't think that seems surprising for fish. I mean, because like I think we've all eaten fish before and like seen their backbone and all those things, and like as you're like cutting them open. Apparently, I don't know what an invertebrate is.
Let's save this one for our Animal Kingdom podcast, which comes out on Thursdays.
Okay.
We'll put this one on as a topic on that podcast.
I would, in all honesty, this coming off season, this is our theme. When we get to the end of this year, we're like, what do we want to do? I think it's got to be an Animal Kingdom geography podcast. We spin the globe, we get a location, and we look up animals from there, and we talk about them and learn things.
Yes, I'm in. It'll be great because it's probably going to be a really short off season this year. So people only have to tolerate it for a couple weeks.
Yeah, but hey, do you know anything about animals that are native to Portugal? Because I don't, and we're about to.
I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I think fish is a big one, by the way.
That seems... Yeah. A coastal country? Now I know. You didn't think I knew it was coastal, did you?
I didn't.
Did you?
No. and I've been there before.
All right.
Like, I knew it was on water. I just didn't know which water.
Yeah. Because you got like Spain. Anyways, we'll get there. Nonetheless, where were we? The Sabres and the Kraken. Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think it'll be different. The only thing that I think is going to give Seattle a little bit more, a little different landscape is this flat cap situation. They are like the prime team for taking on bad contracts. And if a team wants to, I know Vegas like intentionally steered away. They were like, we don't want your bad contracts. But I think Seattle is in a much better situation for taking those on because of contract and the cap.
Can you remind me how is the draft lottery going to work this year with them specifically?
I believe they get the third best odds.
Okay.
But if they change, I think because any changes to the draft lottery will not go into effect for this year. So I believe that they get the third or fourth best. I'll look back to see where Vegas was, because it's the same situation as Vegas, and they were either third or fourth.
I think Vegas was fourth, if I remember correctly.
That does, now that I say third, fourth does seem more accurate, because they didn't want them to be able to like fully as easily get first overall. So
yeah.
All right, there it is. So Sabres hire some scouting staff and fix things up. All right, we got actually the trade deadline. The NHL trade deadline is coming up, and let's stay in Buffalo because Taylor Hall is one of the biggest trade pieces out there. And I think it goes without saying at this point that he's on the move.
Right? Like, how could he not be? Surely he doesn't want to stay. Like, does he have any trade protection at all? He has a no move clause.
So essentially he can pick where he wants to go.
He can pick where he wants to go. Now, the other thing we need to look at is cap space in Buffalo. Not a ton. They could, in theory, hold back some salary on him.
Well, especially since it's a 1-year deal, right? Like they've got plenty of opportunity for that. So they could hold back 3.5 of his $7 million.
Yeah, easily. And I was looking at the wrong player, but Taylor Hall also has a no move clause. That's like $7 million. Jeff Skinner.
Jeff Skinner. A harder contract to move.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be on the move.
No, I think they got him to stay.
Yeah, I think so. So the question is, who's going to go out and get Taylor Hall?
Well, I think back to last year and the teams that were rumored to be in on him last year, one of them being the Colorado Avalanche. At the time, there was talks that he might end up there instead of Arizona. I think the Avalanche are just rumored to be in on every big name because they have cap flexibility. But that's one place I could see him ending up. Joe Sakic, however, has not really been one to make the big price tag trades where he's giving up a lot of future value and getting back a short-term asset. So as much as I think the fit is obviously good for him to not have to be the guy, to be able to even slot in on, that second line, or try him up, move Landeskog down and try him up there. Giving them those options is great, but I just don't see Joe Sakic as pulling that off.
That's a big move for Mr. Sakic at this point. That's like, I don't know, a team like Colorado, that would be a big shakeup to your roster and your locker room. Like at this point, do you want to rock that boat? Take a risk?
Probably not, right?
If things are going well, I don't know, maybe don't mess with it. Especially because I think a team like Colorado, it's way more of a nice to have than a need to have.
Very much so, yeah.
So if you lose out on that one, I think it's not the end of the world. I think we can assume the North Division's out of this, right?
Because they would probably want to make that trade like now.
Yeah.
Is that why you're thinking?
Or last week, yeah.
Yeah, because it would be the deadline is the 12th of April.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that 2-week quarantine to get that in would have to happen this time next week. It would be 2 weeks to deadline.
Yeah. I'm not even sure where in the North he'd go. Back to Edmonton?
Right. They're not bringing him into Edmonton.
Nope.
Toronto can't fit him in.
No way.
I cannot imagine Darryl Sutter wanting anything to do with a scoring winger for some reason. Winnipeg, if they're making a move, should not be for a scoring winger.
No. I can't see him going north.
Yeah. That what? It leaves us Vancouver and Winnipeg, Montreal, and I don't see them being Ottawa. Big players. Ottawa on a sign and trade?
I mean, it's a good way for Ottawa to get the first overall pick.
It's true.
Just make sure Taylor Hall's on your team. It always seems to go there. What about Minnesota? They don't really have the cap space, but they're kind of playing in that like playoff territory in that zone. They'd probably want a scoring winger like that.
Do you think that, like, looking at the format of this year, I assume, and maybe I'm wrong on this, that those teams that are like just sneaking in are less likely to want to try to load up because like you have to play the top team in the division. Do you agree with that?
100% agree. I also think, especially for a contract like Taylor Hall's, it's a pure rental, especially this year. Like, it's just pure rental. How much are you willing to give up for a guy who's likely going to walk away next year and go wherever he wants?
I assume he'll go for a first and something else.
I don't know if I would do that.
It wouldn't excite me, but I think that there are enough teams out there. Maybe, I say that, but maybe there's not enough teams with the cap space to fit him in. But then if they hold back, it's really only 3.5. So yeah. I take that back too. I think that you will find a team in like that mid to upper tier that will take a chance and load up. Like, I could see, because they always pull this off, I could see him ending up on Vegas, and I would hate every second of it.
That would be fun, though. Him on Vegas?
Yeah, it would be a heck of a lot of fun.
That would be fun.
I would hate to have to play them in the playoffs as a team in their division. Which is why, Joe Sakic, it is your time.
Out GM the Vegas Golden Knights.
Hey, they got their own pick this year still. They actually have a second round pick too. They got 2 of those. So I don't know. I think those are some options. I think you could see him, Boston could be another team that I see him end up on.
Yeah. They could use the help.
Yeah. But, all right. Where else? Who else is standing out to you as some folks that
Eric Stahl, if we're staying in Buffalo?
I see some talk of him to Toronto.
Oh, you saw Toronto? I also saw Carolina.
Going home. That seems like the ideal situation for him.
You know where else might make sense is Minnesota.
To also go back. Not home, but that place used to have vacation for a couple years.
What are the Leafs going to do with Eric Stahl?
I don't know. When Joe Thornton gets hurt again, just keep swapping them in and out. I don't think
rotate the veteran players.
What's Stahl going to go for? Like a third, fourth?
Yeah, maybe. We're not going to get much for him, but collect the draft picks. If you're Buffalo, you might as well.
Yes. Oh, if it's not bolted down, you're trading it away.
That one seems to be an easier deal to get done for Buffalo. That one seems to me that it would be an easier deal to get done.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. So do we want to dive more into the Nashville? Because we looked at them the last few weeks. Is there one on Nashville that stands out to you as we heard, number of weeks ago at this point from Elliot Friedman that everyone was available? Who is the one piece there that you would be most wanting to pick up?
Nashville. Let me pull up Nashville. So it's funny that you mentioned that Friedman report because I was listening to him again actually this afternoon, and he said that the name that kept coming up was Ekholm because Ekholm doesn't have a huge cap hit. He doesn't have a huge amount of term. But he also doesn't think that teams would want to give up what Nashville would want for a player like Ekholm, which called Ryan Ellis into question because he's got the term at least. So if you're giving up a bunch of whatever it is, prospects, high picks for a defenseman, they would want to make sure that they're getting term out of their return. And now Nashville's, it makes total sense. But what do you do if you're Nashville?
I think both of those, you don't want to have to get rid of both of those guys, but both of them have to be options for you, right? Ekholm has this year and next, so he's only got one. Ellis has many more than that. So, I would rather get the Ekholm deal. It's less. Sure, he's less good of a player, but now I don't have to worry about that liability of old Ryan Ellis on my team.
So if you're a buying team, you'd rather go after Ekholm.
If I'm a buying team, I know that Friedman said that some teams wouldn't want to pay that price, but I think that you should. I think that's worth that.
I mean, Ellis is also, I'm just seeing now, injured. I don't know what that injury is. That should be another consideration too. Probably pushes me more into the Ekholm column.
Yeah, and that's one that you do have to sort that out as well. They do have a number of those things. Ryan Ellis is currently out with, I believe, a shoulder injury, is what it looks like. As of 3 weeks ago, he was 4 to 6 weeks out. So he's literally, his time frame is to come back at the deadline.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Ekholm's a good piece there. Any teams that you look at and you think they should be looking for a defenseman?
Oh, boy. I mean, there's always Toronto. They're always in need of a defenseman. I would think that they'd have interest in Ekholm. I mean, just from a cap perspective, it seems to be all they could afford. Maybe a team like St. Louis goes after him. I could see that.
Yeah, I could get behind the St. Louis idea.
I don't know if there's anyone in the Central Division who'd go after a player like him. Maybe Florida.
Florida's going to be an interesting team at this deadline.
I agree.
Because they have the ability to make several moves, and we haven't seen what their likelihood is in these scenarios because they haven't been in this much.
They've got cap space.
Definitely. Yeah.
Like they're both this year and so far next year. I mean, they obviously have to fill a couple holes next year, but they've got room to play around with, you know?
Yeah. And looking out east, right? Like I don't expect the Penguins to be big movers.
No.
I don't expect, I mean, Boston does have holes. I know I mentioned Taylor Hall there, but losing Krug and Chara this offseason definitely leaves them weaker on the blue line as well. So I could see them being in on a guy like Ekholm as well. They're a team that's just trying to, you know, keep this. I'm not saying the window is closed, but like the high level window that they're in right now, where they are legitimate cup contenders, is closing.
Ekholm would be a good fit in Boston, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely makes them better, like right away.
Yeah. I could also, I mean, I don't think that Uncle Lou over on the island would make that kind of a move, but for a Trotz team, would not be surprised to see Mattias Ekholm end up.
I don't know. The Islanders are weird, man. I don't get this team because none of their defensemen really stand out to me as like really high level elite defensemen. So like initially my brain's like, yeah, of course, they should go after Ekholm, but something's working for them. Like it's just working. Why mess with that right now?
That's fair. And we'll get more into the Islanders very shortly as well. All right. Anyone else on the trade deadline that you're looking at as potential movers?
Not really big names. I mean, there could be some depth moves. Like I know Detroit's got a bunch of. They've basically set our teams wide open, with the exception of Dylan Larkin. Buffalo should have said that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that they believe that. We talked Rickard Rakell, an option
in Anaheim, yeah,
being moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just not a ton of players out there that are on contracts that end or teams that are fully out of it.
And it's a weird year, man. Like you mentioned teams being fully out of it. The way these standings are moving, I mean, like you look at what happened to Philadelphia in the last, week or two.
Yeah.
It's like things can change on a dime. Which is why I thought it was interesting that Nashville threw in the towel as early as they did. But I don't know, in this weird, flaky season, I don't know if you want to be doing like foundation shaking. I've said this before on our shows. Like, you probably don't want to shake the foundations of your team too much because of this like weird flash in the pan season.
Are you saying Buffalo should not have fired Ralph Krueger? Were they?
No, look, Carl, don't twist my words here.
That's why I asked.
They were 100% in the right in doing that. They were way too late in doing that.
They should have done it before they hired him. Is what you're saying. The day before they announced him as coach, they fired him already.
That's right. So, and you know what? The other thing is, the closer we get to this trade deadline, the more I think nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be real quiet, which we're going to have some weird TV for the trade deadline specials. And I'm very glad that I'll be busy during the day.
Yeah, me too. Especially this year. It's going to be even weirder that they're not all together.
We've seen other years where Jay Onrait and Dan O'Toole literally did it from their houses. They were streets ahead on that.
I love it. It's just going to be a whole day of Zoom trade deadline. Nothing.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, if we could get like maybe they could play horse. They're all at home. Just head out to the driveway.
See, that I'd watch.
Yeah. Do you want to see how your favorite sportscasters can shoot? It's probably not as good as you'd think.
Actually, no, I won't watch that. That sounds awful.
It's not the greatest. All right. We're going to be back on the other side. We're going to do the Elimination Station. We're going to answer some more of your questions that you had for us. See you soon. 2, 1.
Okay, Carl, we have an Elimination Station this week that I am not ready for.
We just sat here for our break took longer than usual, and we just stared at our computers, stared at each other, trying to figure out who to eliminate.
This is where the weirdness of the season's really going to get us on these like middle teams.
This is gonna because we've eliminated already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 15 teams we need to eliminate have been done. And I feel pretty confident about them. To recap the teams we've eliminated from the playoffs, we've got Ottawa, New Jersey and Buffalo, Detroit, Nashville, Los Angeles, Anaheim, and San Jose. And I think if you were to ask at the start of the year who the first 8 teams would be, 7 of those would be the teams that you would put on that list. Right? Nashville's the only one that really is unexpected, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we've got to pick.
So here's how I'm seeing this, okay? We can go easy. We can do an easy one. And stick out west. We can do a hard one and go up north. Or we can pick one that's kind of in between the two in the east or the central.
So here's my problem with the west. We've already eliminated 3 teams from the west.
I know.
And I'm not ready to fully lock in that division yet and say with like 2 months out that division is done.
I'm not so worried about that. I'm just thinking like in the next couple weeks, if we want an easy one to knock off, like we're running long or something, boom, we can get that last team in the West.
It's true.
Okay. Do you agree the North would be the hardest one?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where I want to go.
You want to go north?
I want to go north.
Okay, you're going to have to convince me on this one.
All right. I'm just trying to see if I can find the tweet of this afternoon.
Because I'm looking at the points standings in the North, and I'm looking at the points percentage, and those bottom 3 teams that are left, they're not far from each other.
Correct.
Now, how many teams are making the playoffs in the North? 4?
4. So we've only eliminated 1. So we have 2 more teams to eliminate in the North.
And then the 3 teams in contention for that last playoff spot are 4 points apart in the standings.
Yeah. And I am fully ready to eliminate the Calgary Flames from the playoffs.
Wow. They don't even have the worst points percentage out of them all.
That's part of the problem.
Okay.
Because they don't have the worst. I mean, so looking at that division, right? They are the lowest. They have 16 games. 16 games left this year. They are 4 points behind Montreal. Montreal has a game in hand. Yes, Vancouver has less than them, right? Vancouver has less games. They only have 13 games left this year, which is wild to think that that's where we're sitting at. No, it's more than that. How many games do they play this year? They have 24 more games left. So they play 56. Vancouver has 21 left. So I look at these teams, and yes, I think Vancouver easily could be there as well. I've seen more out of Vancouver.
You've seen more that you like out of Vancouver.
Yes.
That you're confident that they'll finish ahead of Calgary.
Yes.
I mean, the Flames season certainly hasn't been what I thought it would be. They're struggling in a lot of ways, and it's getting a little late into the year to start pulling it all together.
So the projection that I saw today, and this comes from one of the guys who does the afternoon show in Calgary on the radio. he predicted that the Flames would need 16 wins in their next 24 games to make the playoffs.
It's a lot.
Is not happening.
It's a lot.
And part of what he gave as his reasoning. So in the last more than a month, these players have all played at least 17 games. This is the top 5 scorers on the Calgary Flames production. And now I'm not saying these are the ones who put up those numbers. This is who should be. In that time, Johnny Gaudreau, 0 goals, 4 assists. Sean Monahan, 2 goals, 2 assists. Elias Lindholm, 4 goals, 6 assists. Michael Backlund, 3 and 3. Matthew Tkachuk, 2 goals, 7 assists. That is in night. Like, these guys are playing 40-point paces as the best of them. And these are the guys who need to be carrying this team, and they're not.
It's been pretty disappointing. And when you look at goals for on the season, Calgary is ranked 20th in the league, in a league where 4 of the top 10 teams in goals for are in their own division. They've had 1 more goal this year than the Ottawa Senators.
It's not good.
It's not good. And, you know, it makes it easy to pinpoint what their issue is.
Do you want to know my favorite goals for and again, like goals for stat of the year?
Yes.
The Buffalo Sabres have 61 goals for this season. Connor McDavid has 1 less point than that. That's
so insane. That's so crazy.
But so that's why I'm going Calgary. Thoughts?
Let's do it. I mean, I feel like I just piled onto that.
You didn't give me any reasons to not pick them. So
instead of arguing with you about it, I just joined in.
So, okay. So welcome to the Elimination Station, Calgary. But what are you doing to fix this team now? If they are out of it, they have Sutter signed longer, right? He's not just, this isn't an interim thing. He is currently signed to be their coach next year. So that's not changing. What do you do to this roster to get them back in it?
You just pinpointed what the issue is. It's scoring. Right? So let's look at their Elias Lindholm. Who's their leading goal scorer? Johnny Gaudreau, 12 goals. So that's just, it's not good enough. And then you go down from there, Lindholm, 8 goals, Tkachuk, 8 goals, Monahan, 7 goals. To me, you know, maybe the issue, maybe coaching is the answer. Because how do you get your top players going?
That is a way. I mean, tonight we saw, go ahead.
This isn't a new issue for this team or these players, though, is it? I seem to remember maybe it was last season, earlier in the season, they were just on a very bad streak, I guess, where these guys were not performing.
No, this is not a surprise or a one-off thing for them. Not in the slightest.
So what do you do? Like, is bringing in a big name free agent who can score a bunch of goals the answer? Does that get them motivated?
Could you imagine if Taylor Hall was what this team needed all along?
He was so close for so long.
Just a couple hours down the road. Yes and no. If you're bringing Darryl Sutter back as the coach, what is a scoring, like, is a scoring winger going to fit into his system for this team? That's what you need to figure out.
Yeah. So what's it? Well, do we know what his system is?
It's real defensive.
I mean, I guess not.
They also changed to kind of give some more insight. They also did change lines tonight. Sam Bennett on the top line with Gaudreau and Monahan. And with that lineup, they are also currently losing 1-0 to Ottawa.
Why did they do that?
Why did they lose to Ottawa? I think they're not good enough to beat Ottawa.
No.
I think that's why.
Didn't Sam Bennett ask to be traded? Like, why are they now putting him on the first line?
They're showcasing him. Add him to the trade board, Nick.
Oh, he's up there. He's up there. Goaltending's not a huge issue on this team.
It better not be. They just went out and signed Jacob Markstrom last offseason.
It's okay. It's not spectacular, but I wouldn't say it's the problem.
No. Scoring is the problem on this team. Absolutely.
So why would they go get a defensive-minded coach? I know we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, but it's just like, why?
It's a great question that I don't have an answer for.
But he's locked in, right? He'll be back next year.
That's the plan. Unless they fire everyone. Which I can see that happening.
So their options here are, okay, if goaltending is not really an issue, they've got a defensive-minded coach. They could go out and get a bigger name defenseman. They could, go out and trade for an Ekholm or something. I mean, those guys are a little more offensive, I think. So I don't know if that fits in. They could go sign some big scorer who would probably just get frustrated under a defensive-minded coach.
Yeah.
They could just go out and get a bunch of third and fourth line grinders and just grind it out.
I mean, I think if they're going to take that approach, you can look no further to the team we're going to look at next and see that you can do that. But you got to have a real good coach.
Yeah, I was just going to say it can work under the right guy. And I don't know if the current guy that they have is the right guy.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way. Looking at this team, a lot of them are, locked up for some amount. The biggest issue, though, is that Johnny Gaudreau's deal is up after next year. And at this point in time, it does not feel like he's coming back to Calgary. Because he held out the last time this deal was done. And now we're here, and things aren't any better.
And I feel like his name is always floated around trade times. Off-season, trade deadline. Somehow this guy's name's always coming up. Trade him. If you're going to get this streaky kind of play from him, if his heart doesn't really seem to be in it, if you're at a position now where you're firing coaches and you really need to figure out a way to get your team winning next year, trade him. Like you said, he's probably not coming back at the end of his deal.
And he's beyond the point where I think anything's going to change, right? This is who he is. Yeah.
For sure. Now you have to take the player that he is and fit him into your lineup.
Yeah.
There's no molding him at this point.
No. And he is a first line player when he's playing like we know he can.
Yeah. But probably more often than not, or on more contending teams than not, he's a second line player. That's okay too. He'd be a great second line player.
Yes. Although he's probably going to get like a Jeff Skinner size deal. If this was an expanding cap situation, he would get the Jeff Skinner deal and then 100%. Get benched by the soccer coach.
Man, Buffalo.
All right, let's look though. We've alluded multiple times to the New York Islanders. They were your Nick Lidstrom from last week. What stood out to you the most watching the New York Islanders this week?
There's a lot of scoring in their games, which I don't really expect from this team normally. No.
But so you looked at the numbers earlier, right? And you looked at goals for of the Flames and some of those teams, right? Like the Islanders are up there in that division, right? Capitals are first with 106, but then you got the Penguins with 100, and then the Islanders right there, only 10 back of Washington with 96 goals this season. And still barely letting any in.
They're looking good. They're getting a ton of production, obviously, from Matt Barzal, who, by the way, is one of the most fun players to watch in the league.
So good.
He's why I enjoy watching Islanders games.
Yeah, he is a guy. There are select few players in the league that you will watch a game to tune in for, and he is one of them for sure. Part of the problem is the Anders Lee out for the season.
Yeah, I saw that.
Big loss for them.
Their captain.
Yeah.
Jordan Eberle is another standout guy, I thought, for the Islanders.
Yeah, 10-10 for him. Good stuff.
He's looked good the last couple of years after being in a place where everyone kind of thought that he was done.
Yeah, he's just become that good, very good second line player that can play first, second line. Like he's a top 6 player solidly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great pickup for them.
Agreed. The other guy that really stood out to me watching parts of their games this week was Oliver Wahlstrom. Young guy. He looked good out there. He looked fast. Good shot.
And I think what's interesting about that mention is because when you think of this team for the last number of years, it's been that they have Matthew Barzal and a bunch of fourth liners, right?
Yeah.
And Barry Trotz has found ways to make that work, but that's not the case in a large way anymore, right? Like, sure, they do still have Matt Martin. They do still have Cal Clutterbuck. But that's legitimately is just the fourth line that's like that now. There's not as much of that throughout this roster. They've really done a good job of filling in and sticking with that system that's worked incredibly well for them, but adding good talent as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw that. Was it last year with Pajot? Jean-Gabriel Pajot, I believe, was last year.
Yes.
They made that signing. And then they've also kept around some of the guys who've been around for a long time, like the Anders Lees, the Brock Nelsons, the Josh Baileys. And they've contributed well to the team as well.
Yeah. Goaltending wise, they still keep getting, play well in front of them and get performances that look spectacular out of, Simeon Varlamov. Ilya Sorokin, I've been really impressed with him. He's actually have their game on against the third of 3 against the Flyers right now.
Yeah.
And the Flyers are their own set of situations, right? They're playing the Islanders coming off of that 9-0 loss to the Rangers this week. And I was really interested to see how they came out, and they came out great and then let the Islanders back in it. And that was they were down 3-0. The Islanders scored very quickly, ended up losing in overtime, but that really showed what this Islanders team is capable of because the Flyers had to show up. Like you were getting bagged, skated 2-a-days for the rest of the season if you didn't show up that game. And they did. And the Islanders pushed back.
It's funny you mentioned watching that game. I have it on too. And you mentioned it in the context of the goalie, who that's one thing. I haven't been watching it too closely because we've been talking, but that's one thing I have noticed is the Flyers are getting quite a bit. Well, as it stands right now, they're out shooting them 13-5. And the goalie stood out for New York.
Yeah. Sorokin's been, and that's who's in net tonight is Sorokin, not Varlamov. And I've been really impressed with him, and which is great because that looks like they've got their goalie of the future there.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to be excited about on this team. I think that they are a contender this year, and I think they're going to be a contender for, the immediate future.
Yeah. All right. We still have some questions to get to.
Yes.
And you need to pick a Nick's Lidstrom.
Yes.
Do you know who you want to be our team of the week?
No.
All right, let's answer some questions then.
Let's answer some questions.
And we'll get back to them. And you know what? To even throw you more of a bone, we already answered the Sabres question. I'm going to go with a question that's mostly for me. I'll ask it. I'll see if you have a thought. And if not, the question is, which NASCAR driver would be the best goalie? Do you have any thoughts on who would be the best goalie?
I have zero NASCAR knowledge.
Okay.
So no.
Okay. Do you want to, we can't play the game of where's that person from because the answer is always America. There's one.
Why don't you throw out a couple names to me and I'll pick whichever name sounds like it would make the best goalie. And then you tell me how close I am.
All right. We got Denny Hamlin. We got William Byron. Michael McDowell.
Denny Hamlin.
Denny Hamlin?
Yes.
I would say probably out of those three, probably I would probably go him. The ones that, so thinking about like, because goalies are like a little bit extra, right? Out of those, the first name that came to mind was Kyle Busch. One, because he's like, he likes his car a little bit looser than the rest, so he's always having to save it. And so I look at that and I see he's having to make the saves in the car. He can make the saves on the ice. So that's one. I think that Martin Truex Jr. is like a pretty calm guy. I think that he would be able to handle it. And the one problem is that race drivers are typically pretty tiny. And so I think they would actually make terrible goalies. So from what I recall, it's hard for me to fully remember the heights of everyone, but I want to say he's big enough that he could be a goalie. So that would be my idea. The worst one would be Kyle Larson because I think he's like 5'2". So that's why I would go with not him as my goalie.
How tall is my guy?
Let's find out.
I'm going to say he's 5'9".
He is 1.83 meters.
Oh no.
He's 6 feet tall. So that's fine. That's a competent goalie.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. That's the new goalie. It's the goalie of the present.
Which is the guy who I said was tall enough. He's 5'11". So you got a little bit there.
All right.
And I said Kyle Larson was too short to be a goalie. He is 1.68 meters. He's 5'6". You can't be a goalie, Kyle. I'm sorry.
No, it's too short.
So there we go. All right. Next question. This one's more up your alley. Better goalie fight, Wah Osgood or Wah Vernon? This goes back to when we used to be able to play each other.
I'm curious to know what your answer is to this one as well. But I say, and it's not even really a competition for me, Wah Vernon.
Yeah, I think in my head, I remember Wah Osgood more, but Wah Vernon is, I think just because of like recency bias, which is weird that after all this time, that's the one that recency bias shouldn't be a thing anymore. But I think Wah Vernon, certainly on a fight and for what it started, that one is the more important fight. There
was just so much bubbling under the surface in that game and with those two teams. And Patrick Waugh was going to go regardless of if the other goalie wanted to fight or not.
Yeah.
Like there's that iconic moment of him skating out and colliding with Brendan Shanahan at the blue line. And then somehow he still made it to the other end of the ice and started fighting Mike Vernon. The Wah Osgood fight, from what I can remember, was a little more like pushy, pulley, dragging each other around more so than just throwing blows.
And like there was some real hatred in that Vernon fight.
Yeah.
Like you said, mostly started from Wah, but Vernon was not far behind.
No, that whole team was fired up. Both of them were. That was a crazy night.
It was wild.
Yeah.
And if you want to go back and look at some of those, you can. When in our episode, I don't remember what number that was.
What, the one where we watched that stupid video?
The great video? Yes.
We don't talk about that episode.
You can go find that one. It's great. All right. One last question. literally we started the show talking about movies and some of the things that are happening in and around the world. And one big thing that's happening right now is March Madness. You a March Madnesser?
I used to be when I worked in an office.
Yeah, that seems like the number one place to be in the March Madness.
Yeah, I mean, there's always somebody who did the pool and collected the cash and passed out the papers and collected them. So I used to be. I haven't done it this year.
No, I didn't either. Mostly because I was the guy who did those things. And I had some friends of the podcast ask me, "Hey, are you guys doing your March Madness bracket this year?" But with like schedules being weird and just the way that college basketball was run, I very much struggled getting into it this year, more so than ever before. And I have literally no idea anything that's happening in college basketball right now.
Yeah, no, me neither. I also think that I didn't do a bracket, but I'm sure my bracket is on fire. So
I can tell you, looking at some of the upsets that have happened, I can tell you I would not have picked them. I would not have picked Oral Roberts to go on a run like they have.
What is your history with these brackets? Like, are you generally a good bracket creator?
I'm decent. Like, in almost every bracket, I'm going to pick the 12 to upset because that happens every year, right? So I'll probably pick at least two 12s. Usually, like, I mostly try to look at how they did in, like, just general record, not so much ranking. I try to just blindly look at it without looking at where they're seated, and go from there. So I do okay. I get by for sure. I've won a couple of them in my day, but I'm certainly not a lock.
I just always I don't know that much about it, so mine were just pure guesses. I was always out after like the first round.
Did you base it off of like mascot?
Yeah, names and logos. And I still sucked. You'd think that just shooting in the dark, you'd hit on a couple. Never.
That's fine. Maybe next year. You'll take the year off and you'll be back with a vengeance next year.
We'll give it a shot.
I mean, what words can you use to describe 10-time first-team All-Star, 2-time second-team All-Star, 7 Norris trophies, Conn Smythe trophy, attention to detail, come to the rink every day, he was the best player in practice, Nick's no maintenance, it's about class.
All right. In this time, did you pick a Nick Lidstrom?
I picked a team, and I don't think we've picked them yet. Okay, but they play 4 times this week.
Ooh, tell me more.
The Florida Panthers.
We have not.
I think they're pretty much a lock at this point.
Yeah, that seems good. And I mean, we don't talk about the Panthers as much. It's a good opportunity for us to watch some games and talk about them next week.
Yeah, so they play Chicago twice, and then they play Dallas twice. So they play Tuesday, Thursday, and then Dallas, they play Saturday, Sunday. And then we record on Monday. That's
great. I'm actually very glad that she picked them. So thank you, Nick. To play our game that we play with this, head over to Twitter. We play high-low sticking, where we put the over-unders for these games. And you tell us if you think the goal total will be over or under that. And you can do that over at Fourth Line Podcast on Twitter. You can head to thefourthlinepodcast.com and find out more about us. You can find some great articles from our writing team. I know Alex today put up an article about Thatcher Demko and his emergence as the goalie in Vancouver. You can find us on wherever you listen to podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify. You can find us at Full Press Radio on their app and on their website. Or you can go and listen to us on our website. Both are great places. You'll find us on both of them. We'll be back next Monday, where we are a mere 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. So perhaps we'll see some Canadian teams making some deals this week. But until next week,
it's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. The Buffalo Sabres fired Ralph Krueger. I bet it felt good like picking a big booger.